Hello, students! Today we were going to explore 3 important words you might hear in the news that describe how diseases spread. Outbreak, epidemic, and pandemic. They may sound similar, but each one tells us something very different about how big a health problem is and how far it has spread. Understanding these terms is super useful, not just for science class, but for understanding what's happening in the world around us. So, let's break them down, one by one. First up, let's start with the smallest one, an outbreak. An outbreak happens when a disease or illness pops up suddenly, but only in a small, specific area or within a small group of people. It's like a surprise party that nobody wanted. For example, imagine if several students in our school all got sick with the same thing right after eating from the same lunch line in the cafeteria. The illness didn't affect the whole city yet. Just happened right here, inside our school. That situation would be called an outbreak. Another good example is a group of people at a summer camp, all getting sick from drinking contaminated water. Again, the problem is local and limited to that one specific place. The key thing to remember about an outbreak is that it's small and contained. When this happens, health officials usually step in quickly to figure out where the illness came from so they can stop it from spreading any further. Now, let's move on to the next level. An epidemic. An epidemic happens when an outbreak starts to grow and spreads to more people and into larger areas. This means the disease is no longer contained in just one school, building, or neighborhood. Instead, it's starting to move through multiple communities, cities, or even across an entire country. Let's go back to our school example. If that illness that started in our cafeteria spreads to other schools all across the district, and then to nearby towns, making hundreds or even thousands of people sick, it's no longer just a small outbreak. It has now become an epidemic. Epidemics require a much bigger response from health departments because the disease is spreading faster and affecting way more people. You might see doctors, hospitals, and government officials start sharing important information, reminding everyone to wash their hands, stay home if they're sick, or get vaccinated. So, think of an epidemic as a much bigger wave of illness that goes way beyond one small spot and affects a much larger population. Finally, let's talk about the biggest and most serious term, a pandemic. A pandemic is what happens when an epidemic spreads even further across multiple countries, continents, or even the entire world. This is the highest level of disease spread. A recent example we all know is the COVID-19 pandemic. It began in one part of the world, but eventually spread to almost every country on the planet. We saw schools close, travel stop, and our daily lives change in big ways. That's because a pandemic affects global health, not just local communities. But here's a really important point to remember. The word pandemic doesn't necessarily mean the disease is super deadly. It simply describes how far it has spread. It's the worldwide scale of the spread, not how severe the illness is, that defines a pandemic. Pandemics usually lead to countries working together, with scientists and doctors from all over the world sharing information to develop treatments and protect people everywhere. So, let's do a quick review to make sure it all sticks. An outbreak is a small, sudden start in one specific area. An epidemic is when it gets bigger and spreads across communities or a whole country. And the pandemic is when it goes global, spreading across the entire world. A simple way to remember the order is small, then bigger, then global. Understanding these terms helps us stay informed, calm, and prepared. Whether it's a small outbreak in a school, an epidemic across a state, or a pandemic around the world. Knowing the difference helps us understand how serious a situation is and what we might need to do to stay safe. So, the next time you hear these words on the news or in class, you'll know exactly what they mean and why they're so important.